Thank you very much.
Have fun, yeah? No, use the clicker. This is next slide. Previous slide. Cool.
Hey everyone, well, thanks to Mona and the rest of the Melon team for inviting and for putting together this awesome event. So I'm Luis from Aragon, and I'm going to talk about governance, main challenges on governance, and like 3 different models that we suggest or that we've been thinking of to create governance on these new token-based economies and token-based projects. So I only have 15 minutes, so it's very hard for me to like get deep into governance, and governance is very tricky. So I will just try to like get an overview of it. So first of all, I want to say out loud that I think that open projects, which are city name maybe, but I think is the best way to describe generally what we are seeing today, like open source projects with a token in which anyone can participate and anyone can also benefit from the project succeeding or failing using basically this token or buying this token. I don't believe they are startups. I believe they are something else. They are something new. And so, for example, we see all of these ICOs, all of these projects that are raising a lot of money, even hundreds of millions of dollars. And right now we are at a weird stage because all that money is being directed towards an operating company. And that operating company usually has some kind of multi-sig wallet. And then in the end, like 2 or 3 people get to say and get to manage those funds. While the notion is that token holders and the people behind the project and the first buyers of the token should be the ones doing governance. So right now we are at this weird stage, while it's technically very infeasible to create on-chain governance. The last one trying that out, the DAO, well, the last one trying that out on Ethereum, the DAO kind of catastrophically failed. So we are trying to be very careful in that. And right now we are at this weird stage where you cannot do on-chain governance easily. You can implement some like basic things, but you cannot move your entire governance on-chain. So this token is being like raised by operating companies, but it shouldn't be that way. It should be people, via different governance mechanisms, the one that decide what happens with the project that they have backed. So there are a few challenges. It sounds great. It sounds a bit utopian even. But in practice, it's very hard to do governance because of different reasons. First one is humanity hasn't really tested a lot of governance models yet, because previously, 2 centuries ago, if you wanted to try out a new governance model, I don't know, communism or anarcho-capitalism, things like that, people would probably either starve or die, because you try a new different governance model and then you end up with some kind of dictator that kills people, things like that. That has happened in history many times. But now we are at this crazy stage in which we can actually try out new governance models on-chain with no people getting damaged. So that's huge, and I believe that will pace up the whole human evolution and human progress in the next decade. But there is a few challenges here. So for example, we are used to traditional democracy, 1 people, 1 vote. And that it's very hard to enforce on the blockchain. You have to have some kind of KYC. If you don't do any kind of KYC, then it's kind of impossible because, tokens are transferable. And even if you don't write a function on the contract to transfer them, they are still transferable because someone else can create a wrapper. So tokens are transferable. We have to take that into account. That means that people can buy tokens, and if you have a very simple democracy system like 1 token, 1 vote, means that people can trick it by buying tokens, which we are not used to in democracy because people can buy tokens via marketing, but they cannot buy tokens or votes, just going to the market, right? Then there is this other factor, which is that code is laws. So there is no undo. We are used to politicians creating different laws and then being able to undo them in no time. In the blockchain, you just cannot do that. If for some reason you push out some governance mechanism that is able to overwrite itself, and some people that overwrite that governance mechanism are able to do that, then there is no way to go back to the last governance mechanism. So that means there is no go back, and people have taken over your project. And I mean people as attackers, not the actual people. And then there's this other weird thing that is happening right now, which is that you have to, right now, there is no way to do this on-chain governance in a feasible way. So you have the challenge of moving from a multi-sig system in which you have all of the, gazillion dollars you raise from your ICO in a multi-sig to a model where people in many different governance structures are able to decide what happens with the funds. So that's also very hard, and you have to be very careful and do it very gradually. You don't want to put your 100 mil tomorrow on a super untested code and super untested governance mechanism. And we have to think that governance is not only code. Governance is how people behave, and so we're trying to code how people have to behave or how to incentivize people to behave, which has the technical implications of that, which is that the code should do what we want to do. But we also have the kind of human implications there, which is that people should behave and act and believe what we want them to think about the system, or how we want them to interact with the system. So that's really hard. So there are a few models that we've been thinking about. I will not go into a lot of detail, but different models that, as I said before, we haven't been able to truly test in the in our governments or things like that, because governments are slow, people get killed if something goes wrong, all of that. But now with the blockchain, we're able to try out these new models. So there is one model which is very interesting. It's liquid democracy. So basically, liquid democracy consists in which you have, people have, token holders in this case, could have voting power, and then they could be able to delegate that voting power to any other entity in the system. And I say entity because something great about Ethereum is that you don't know if an address is your brother or another person in the world, or a 12-year-old kid in Botswana, or your fridge, right? You just don't know. So it can be an AI, the one that you delegate votes to. And at the same time, that delegation can then occur another way. Like this delegate can delegate their votes to another delegate. So that opens up some attack vectors. For example, the infinite delegation attack, like you can delegate votes, and then another one can delegate to another one, and then it's a never-ending story. And the great thing about this system is that it's very similar to how we used to think about democracy. Like, we delegate our votes to someone in the parliament or Senate, or things like that. But with the twist that in governments, these cycles occur like each 4 years, things like that. But here, you can delegate your vote to another party, and then if that party acts as you thought it would act, then everything's good. If not, if the other party, if the delegate misbehaves, you can withdraw your delegation and you can delegate your voting power to another delegate. So you could have even a market of delegates, and these delegates, you could see how they perform, and you could constantly delegate your voting power to the delegate that you think that it really represents you and your will on this governance structure. So that's very interesting. It's similar to the structure we have right now about democracy, but also combines the fact that you can constantly change voting power to one another, and also anyone can become a delegate. Obviously, governance is a very complex thing, so you can even create a governance system where the delegates have to go through some kind of test. But in this example, I will just say that anyone can be a delegate. Then there is another very interesting governance system, or even not a governance model, but a piece to a governance model, which is expert networks. So basically, expert networks would work like this. So there is an entity that asks a question, and then there is another entity that offers an answer to that question. So that question can be things like, should we use Mac on this organization, or should we use Linux, right? And then, so the entity who answers can stake tokens. So basically, that way, the entity that stakes tokens represents that entity is sure, or to some extent sure, about the answer it has given. And then there are another set of entities who are already reputable in this network, who can either say, okay, yeah, that answer is reliable, or no, that answer is not reliable. And so depending on that, the part that answers can be rewarded or punished. So you're basically incentivizing great answers. And so some decisions of a governance network could be delegated to this kind of expert networks. So there are some governance decisions that are very objective, so to say, in which you have clear metrics and you have clear niche expertise, so you can use expert networks for that. And then there is my favorite one, which is Futarchy. And Futarchy is a very interesting, I love the put your money where your mouth is, because it is literally that. So we are used to voting in systems where we vote and then things happen, and then we perceive the actions of our politicians or our people that are governing us in different ways, but we don't have a way to get rewarded or punished if our votes were correct. And so this will work the following way, and I basically cloned Vitalik explanation for Futarchy because I love it. So basically, let's say this is America in 2008, right? So we define a metric, a success metric, a metric that we believe represents us and represents what would be best for our country or governance system. I say governance system because it may be a country, maybe the world, it may be your organization, maybe your marriage. I don't know how that will work out, but you can try that out. So you can basically define this metric, for example, GDP of the US, let's say, and then there's a proposal, for example, bail out the banks because they are great and whatever, and then you set up prediction markets for yes and no, and then basically you close all the trades, wait until there's a tangible outcome and a tangible outcome to that metric that we have previously defined, which could be the GDP. And then basically, if this proposal has affected the GDP in a positive way, then we reward people who voted for that proposal. And if it does not, then we basically can either punish the other part or not reward anyone. So this is really like incentivizing great proposals, and I believe that this example is very interesting because there is a lot of corrupt leaders, and I'm sure that if people had to put money where they vote for their leader, things would be very different. So you can do that at any scale. Again, you can do that inside your organization. You can do that with bonuses too. So for example, are we using React or are we using Vue? And then you can define a metric, for example, number of external contributors. And then if you see that that decision of using Vue or React has affected positively the number of contributors in your GitHub repo, then you can reward that person in your organization who made the right call, or the other way around. So it's a very interesting system. And also, I want to talk about how to make all of these complex systems possible. We have released a, I don't know if I call it a white paper. It's basically a spec, not a white paper, on what we call Aragon OS, which is basically the newer factor for Aragon. Aragon is a governance system for the ones that don't know it. You can create your own organization on the blockchain. You can do many things that a normal organization can do, like creating cap tables, creating tokens, voting, all of that things. But you can also do crazy things. For example, with this new Aragon OS spec, we have defined how to create a very flexible system in which apps can talk to each other, and there's a permission system in the middle. So you can even create crazy mechanisms, like if you're a token holder, you can talk to the voting app to open a new voting, so only token holders can create a new voting. And then if that voting passes, then you can submit a transaction to the multisig, because the voting app has permission to withdraw funds from the multisig, for example. And so I don't know if you can see it there, but there are different permissions you can assign. So for example, there is this voting app, and you can assign permissions to people who can create a new voting. And then there is a tokens app, which takes care of ANT. So it can issue tokens, it can issue new ANT, it can do things with that token, basically. And then you can give permissions to your voting app to issue new tokens on this app. So basically, if then you give people the ability to, or the permission to open a new voting, you're allowing them to indirectly create or issue new tokens if the voting passes. And this can get as complex as you want. It can get crazy with 10 different levels of votings or things like that. So we want a lot of eyes on that. We want people checking out the Aragon OS document. If you are a developer or technical enough to understand programming architectures, please check that out. It would be great to have more eyes on it. And also, if you like this kind of governance challenges and making governance possible, then also we're hiring, so we would love to know more. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Next up is Vignesh from Lendroid. You are many chains on ecosystem? Or rise of the